Hi, I'm Daniel Butler. Welcome to another edition of America's Dumbest Criminals.
On this episode of America's Dumbest Criminals, taggers get lights, camera, busted.
Give me the money.
A gutsy gal tries applying herself.
This is really stupid.
A crook gets all dressed up. And you want butter on your fingers?
Hey man, you wanna buy some crack?
The laughs just keep coming on this week's episode of America's Dumbest Criminals. Here's your host, Daniel Butler.
Usually, graffiti taggers work under the cover of night, defacing public property as discreetly as possible. However, some clever cops in San Jose, California figured out a way to lure these taggers into the light. The spotlight, actually. Police set up a fake film production company and sent out flyers which invited the taggers to appear in a documentary on their illegal art form. A trip to Hollywood was even offered as a bonus. Avoiding entrapment by asking their subjects not to paint and just show them their previous works, the officers/cameramen were quite surprised when many of their stars began spraying the wall anyway. The on-camera ad-libbing resulted in 31 arrests as the documentary turned into a giant game of kick the can. Perhaps dizzy from the fumes, one disappointed youngster asked a pressing question in the police station. So does this mean I'm not going to LA? Our next story comes to us from the Cary, North Carolina Police Department. A woman had come into the shop earlier and filled out a job application. She returned a short while later, but not to see if the job had been filled, but rather to empty the till. As soon as the woman left with her unearned wages, the counterman called the cops.
I'm calling from the coffee shop down at the mall here. Listen, we just got robbed. Some gal came in, she filled out an application here. She actually left her address on it.
With all the vital information in the hands of the police, the woman was soon apprehended and charged with attempted robbery. As it turned out, the woman needed the money to bail her husband out of jail for violating parole. But now they're together again, in prison. Ain't love grand? Officer Carl Traber recounts how he was able to get two dumb criminals to call the kettle black.
My partner and I, we were working Wilshire Division, traffic. And of course, Friday night, you look for drunk drivers. We got out there about 11 o'clock. That's when we started our shift. And we were going northbound on Pico, and we spotted a car. Pulled him over, said, my goodness, we got hardly out of the station already, got a drunk driver. And he was pretty soused. Put the cuffs on, put him in the back seat. And while we were checking out the car and everything, another car came by, almost hit us. So we chased after him, another drunk driver. So we put him in the back seat. While we were en route to the station, this one drunk looked at the other and said, you mean to tell me you were driving as drunk as you are? So the other guy said, you have to talk. I mean, I wouldn't be driving if I'd be as drunk as you are. And the one guy said, if I would be as drunk as you, I would have to drive. I couldn't even walk. And we actually used them on the police report as witnesses against each other.
This dumb criminal decided to pick up a few things at a local hardware store after it closed. Unfortunately, he forgot to grab one last item before he left the building. You can see our sneaky snatcher as he casually carries items in and out of the back door of the business. They probably would have made a clean getaway except for one little hitch. When police arrived on the scene, they immediately noticed a piece of paper that had been used to jam the door open during the robbery.
Donna, look at this. Can you believe that? Let me call it in.
It turned out to be a traffic ticket issued to the American bungalow earlier that day, complete with his name, address, and car tag. What will you do if your new VCR breaks down after a year or so? Well, it's no problem if you have the good sense to get an extended warranty. However, in this case, good sense turned out to be just plain nonsense. It all started in a Pittsburgh electronics store after two men presented credit cards to buy over $2,000 worth of high-grade goods. Well, why not enjoy the comfort of extended warranty coverage? You only have to fill out a simple form. And our two clever consumers proceeded to do just that. However, there were only a couple of glitches in the transaction. Number one, the credit card they had just used to make their purchase was hot.
Can I get you to fill out a couple of warranties for the
Warranty, yeah.
Number two, they filled in their real names and addresses on the warranty forms. The credit card had been reported stolen just that morning. To quote a police officer on the scene, somewhere in this world, two villages are missing their idiots.
Freeze! Drop the remote. We'll be right back.
I'm Daniel Butler, and this is the lovely, the luminous Beaumont Bacon.
Thank you, Daniel.
Well, you're welcome. In New Hampshire, two guys stole a safe from a friend's house and made off with it in a wheelbarrow.
For safekeeping?
Well, not very.
No.
Their little plan hit a bump, tipping it over and sending the safe crashing to the ground.
Oops.
Yeah, they panicked when they were spotted by a woman across the street, so they quickly picked the safe up, carried it behind a wall, and buried it.
How far? 6 feet under? How far did
Close.
you bury that?
Under a pile of leaves, actually.
It must have taken the police hours to really dig and blow away all those leaves.
Oh,
there.
I'm sure it did. With the woman's help, though, the police caught them quickly and piled the rakish rogues into a cell for questioning.
Well, why didn't they just hide the safe in a fog bank?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Speaking of banks, this crafty criminal in Fort Lauderdale decided to take a taxi to rob a bank. However, the bank was closed, so he told the driver to take him to another one and wait for him to cash a check and come back out. The driver figured that this was the goon's way of sneaking out on paying his fare. So he called into the bank on his cell phone and told them to let him know if the guy tried to slip out.
Yeah, bank robbers have been known to be slippery in the past.
This robber, though, he returned to the cab and instructed him to drive quickly to his next destination. As they were pulling away, the bank called the cab driver on his cell phone and let him know about the robbery and that the police would be stopping by to pay his fare a little visit, which they did a few minutes later.
Wait, so the cabbie ended up not getting paid anyway?
Well, I'm sure that he was able to do a little shopping with the reward money that he got.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our favorite part of this segment, the Vidiot of the Week. From all of the stories we received, this one is our favorite. An officer made a routine traffic stop and noticed a strong smell of wacky tobacco as the driver rolled down his window. A quick search of the car produced a bag of marijuana, and the goof was put in the back of the cruiser.
For the long ride downtown, I
Well,
suppose.
our crook kept himself busy during the trip. When the officer took the guy out of the cruiser, he noticed a wadded up piece of paper left behind on the back seat where the guy had been sitting. When the officer removed the little bundle of joy, there was white powder on the seat and powder spilling out of the wadded up paper.
I bet it wasn't baby powder.
Well, it was just big baby powder. The crook tried to deny that it was his until the officer pointed out that the powder was wrapped in a traffic citation that the goon had gotten a week earlier.
Why pay those citations when you can carry them around to wrap your drugs in them?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Probably even keep my vitamins fresh, you know? Have to get a lot of parking tickets, though. There are certain things that you don't want to wake up from a nap. A bear, an ex-girlfriend, or a cop. Two burglars were busy as bees, filling the back of their car, and didn't seem to notice the police cruiser parked right across the street. Our napping night shift officer heard the commotion, looked out of his window, and witnessed the stupidity going on right in front of him. So he did the neighborly thing. He got himself all gussied up and gave his new neighbors a little housewarming present.
Hey, stay right there. Huh? What you guys doing? Rob my neighbor's house? Give me that camera.
A free ride down to the station. Dumb criminals know a lot about putting their foot in their mouths. But this next buffoon topped them all by putting his foot in his mouth and then practically swallowing it. In a court of law, no less. In Oklahoma City, a man on trial for armed robbery had fired his lawyer and was doing a pretty decent job of defending himself until he came up against a hostile witness.
Can you tell me exactly where you were on the night of July 17th?
You know where it was, and I know that you did.
That's a lie. That's a lie. I should have shot you that night when I was there. If, Your Honor, I was there, of course, if.
He didn't win the case.
Should I get you some more popcorn?
When we come back,
Give me the money and put it in the bag. Sir, put the money down, please.
Sour purse.
Put your hands behind your head.
Yeah.
Step out of the booth.
Old switcheroo.
Hey, man. Hey, man. You want to buy some crack?
Designated driver.
Be cool, be cool.
Lights, camera, busted.
If I were you, I'd drop the remote now.
A man walked into this Palm Beach restaurant one afternoon and ordered a vodka, a plate of lemon slices, and sugar. This sounded strange, but not as unusual as his next request.
Do you mind if I count my money?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, thanks, man.
The counting crow then pulled out about $10,000 and began arranging it neatly on the table in front of him. The waiter got the drink and lemons, then made a quick call to the local police.
Yeah, that'll be it, thanks.
Officers arrived and arrested the sour purse, who it turned out had just finished robbing 2 small banks a few blocks away. Needless to say, the waiter didn't get a tip. People go to the movies to be entertained, even dumb criminals. But sometimes you'll find a really dim bulb who wants to light up the marquee and get into the action himself.
Give me the money!
In Lebanon, Indiana, an ex-con went to the local theater and, perhaps depressed by the coming attractions, demanded a jumbo bucket of hot money from employees. Police think he asked for extra butter because the sap tried to give them the slip before he even left the building, cursing a blue streak out the door. It didn't take long for the authorities to track down Colonel Slanders and arrest him.
Is this the guy that you called about with the money in the popcorn bag?
Yes. Yeah,
Is this, does that look like the
yes,
amount of money?
exactly like, yes.
All right, great. Okay, wait, let me take him outside. I'll put him in the car. I'll be right back.
Thank you.
Some of you may have heard of the 5-fingered discount, or in layman's terms, shoplifting. Well, let's take a look at this gift-giving grifter who decided to try her luck and go for 10. A Victorville woman had stolen a part for her husband's car to give to him as a birthday present. Unfortunately, she stole the wrong model, but told him that she'd exchange it the next day for the correct one. Opting to bypass customer service, she sneaked gift number 1 back to its shelf, snatched its replacement, and that's when she was snagged by store security.
Mister, see that camera right there? We watched everything you've done.
That should teach her husband to always look a gift horse in the mouth. There's an old adage that a criminal always returns to the scene of the crime, but usually not the way these two did. It happened in Meridian, Mississippi, late one Sunday night. 2 men broke into a restaurant, made off with all the cash and books of gift certificates. The ambience at the restaurant must have been quite compelling, because 2 days later, the same 2 knuckleheads came back for dinner. And to add insult to injury, they tried to pay for the meal with some of the stolen gift certificates. They were easily recognized and arrested. Now, like their crustacean counterparts, the guys are in a tank of their own, downtown.
You have the right to remain seated.
Some people just won't take no for an answer, like this dumb driver in Los Angeles. Officers pulled over a guy after he ran a red light and found out that he was driving without a valid license. After his arrest, he and his car were picked up down at the station by a relative. Less than half an hour later, the same officers were out on patrol and noticed a car pull up beside them at the light.
I can't believe this guy.
The same guy who they had just arrested was driving the same car. He was just as surprised as the officers beside him and was arrested again. This time, he was in double trouble. His car was impounded and he was incarcerated. Sometimes in life, when you do a good deed, you're rewarded in some positive way in the future. This officer must have been in the karmic express lane. An officer from Portsmouth, Virginia, decided to be a good Samaritan when he encountered a drunk and opted to give the guy a lift home rather than a trip down to the station. However, as he was about to pull away, another man jumped into the passenger seat.
Hey, man, you want to buy some crack?
Yeah, get in.
Although the officer was in plain clothes, his badge was clearly in sight and his gun was on his belt. Even his radio was broadcasting police calls.
And there you are. Oh, come on, man. Get out of the car. Come on.
The officer then took the confused crackhead for a little wheeling and dealing down at the station.
What are you, stupid? Look at this.
The footage we are about to see is from an in-store closed-circuit security camera. Now, what makes this footage stand out from the average caught-on-tape fare? Well, it's not just that we see our stupid suspects in plain sight. No, it's not even the fact that they thought destroying the camera would also destroy the tape machine located in another room. It's the fact that the very next day, one of these morons showed up at the police station for an unrelated charge wearing the same Chicago Bulls jacket and cap he wore in the robbery. The officer who had taken the initial police report and watched the surveillance tape was working that day and instantly recognized the perp, arresting him on the spot. And that's no bull. We hope you've learned one thing this week. For every dumb crime, there's an even dumber criminal just waiting to bungle. Right here on America's Dumbest Criminals.
Hey, wake up. Huh? Wake up.
Oh, man.
On the next episode of America's Dumbest Criminals.
Open up. Police.
Hey, what'd you say, fool?
The video debut of Roller Bullies. A motorhome madman takes a short trip. A drunk driver tries breaking a habit.
What are you, stupid?
A dumb doper in Monkey Not See, Monkey Do. All this and more on the next episode of America's Dumbest Criminal.
Hey, give me your money. Give me your money. Out of here, you.
We have a lot of traffic warrants in Los Angeles, thousands and thousands of traffic warrants. And of course, the suspects, the violators, they realize that if you come to the house and you say, "Are you Mr. Wilson?" all they have to say is no. And unless the police officer has independent knowledge that this is Mr. Wilson, we can't arrest him. And when we ask him for ID, he says, "I don't have any." So what are you going to do? So I devised something with my partner. What we did is, I said that we had a warrant, for example, for Roy Wilson. Went to the address, knocked on the door, and said, "Police officer, are you Mr. Bill Johnson?" He says, "No." "Oh, wait a minute now. It says here 52 4th Avenue. He says, "No, I'm not Bill Johnson." I said, "The physical description, you fit the description?" He says, "No, I'm not Bill Johnson." So I said, "Can you prove that you're not Bill Johnson?" I said, "Of course. I have a driver license." I said, Let's see. Of course, the driver license said Roy Wilson. I said, "Oh, Roy Wilson. You know, we happen to have a warrant for Roy Wilson also." And so it worked pretty good. We got him on that one. So it was kind of fun. You didn't have to fight the guy, you know, and he did go to jail. And obviously, that's our job to arrest the violators. As I told you, I retired from the Los Angeles Police Department in '84, and I joined the Los Angeles Community College District as a police officer. And we had kind of an interesting experience there. Unfortunately, we had a lot of break-ins in the men's locker room. And the victims were mostly the football players who, when they go practice, which they did every day, they put their stuff in their wallets and their stuff in the lockers, locked them up, and then went out to the practice field. So we had a little stakeout, and one of our cadets observed a big, tall, 6'3", African-American, good size, about at least 200 pounds or heavier, break into one of the lockers. So he called us. So we came running out, and of course, the guy spotted us and took off. Unfortunately, he went the wrong direction. He went right across the football practice field. And we couldn't catch him because we had all our gear on, and of course, he was free. And so I hollered out to the football players, "There's the guy who's breaking into your lockers." And the whole 30, 40-man team were after him. And they have some good runners, especially the wide receiver. And to make a long story short, they caught up with him on Coldwater Canyon. And my job basically was to keep the football players from killing him. They really got a hold of that guy.